I'm Christina. Welcome to the Revolver Fan First podcast, where we go deep with artists about their history as a fan, because all artists were fans first. Now, today we have a very special guest, an esteemed special guest, a guitar legend in his own right, the mighty Slash. Welcome.
Hi.
Mild-mannered human being, also. It's living large, living.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate all that, but no, I'm not that guy really. But thank you.
So, who was the first artist you put on a pedestal?
The first artist that I put on a pedestal, fuck. I guess it would have to have been Keith Richards. That was the original. That was my first, like, okay, I love the Stones, and he was definitely the guy in the Stones that I identified with when I was a kid.
What was so special about him?
Probably because, like when I was a kid, like coming up in the late 60s and in the early 70s, there was the Kinks, there was the Moody Blues, there was the Stones, there was the Beatles, and the Yardbirds, right? Those were like the bands when I was born in England. So those were the first bands that I remember. And the Stones were obviously the troublemakers of the lot, right? And Keith was the dark horse. So I always related to the dark horse in any configuration, any kind of group, or if it was a movie, I was always the villain guy, right? So,
Well, there's nothing like an outlaw,
Yeah.
Like that's ultimately the thing. Who was the first artist you you saw yourself in?
Well, I guess maybe some of that, and I also, like the guys in Aerosmith, I really sort of related to where Joe Perry was coming from back when I was like 14, for whatever reason. A 14-year-old thinks that, but yeah, I definitely sort of related to that attitude, and same with Keith Richards and some of the other sort of guys like that.
Do you feel like you have kind of lived that way as well? There's a bit of
when you're a kid, I didn't know anything about how those guys necessarily lived then. It was really sort of just on the surface. I didn't know any of the history. I didn't know of any of the sort of like rumors and whatnot. That's something that came later. So I think it was more of an attitude thing.
Yeah. What was it like when you met them?
The first time I ever really personally met Keith, he was great. But he pulled a fucking switchblade on me. Yeah, Ronnie Wood introduced us and took me to Keith's hotel room, and Keith said, sort of motioned me over, and then he put, not a switchblade, a butterfly knife, right? And flashed it around. I was like, cool, I didn't know what I was supposed to react to that. But it was a funny, sort of auspicious kind of first meeting. When I first met Joe was when Guns N' Roses was opening for Aerosmith back in 1988.
Yeah.
And Joe was very cool. Both those guys are really down to earth, good guys, very set in their ways, but very much, good people.
Yeah.
So I was happy to meet people that I sort of, looked up to, and find that they were down to earth and cool.
Yeah. Did you feel like you were on the path then?
Did I feel like I was on the path?
Like on the path to becoming.
Yeah. I don't know if that's really, no, I don't think that's really how you sort of look at it. Because you were on the path anyway, right? Because I was out there. I was in my 20s when I first met Joe, and I was probably in my 30s when I first met Keith.
Yeah.
But unbeknownst to Keith, I also met him at Seymour Cassell's house when I was like 15, with a bunch of other kids that were hanging out at Seymour's, and the Stones came into town, and Keith and Ronnie came to Seymour's, but I don't think he remembers that. Ronnie remembers, though. He remembers that's where Ronnie and I first met.
Well, that's beautiful. So your parents were pretty involved in like the 60s lifestyle. Like, your mom made costumes, your dad made album covers. What are kind of like some of the vivid memories of growing up kind of immersed in that world?
It's a lot. I was really fortunate to have come up in that environment. It was really creatively explosive. and it was a very inspired time, and people were really, it was very artistically motivated, you know,
Yeah.
and people were doing their own thing, and there was a definite culture thing happening with young artists that they were on in their own world, and it was really cool. I think I have a lot of them. One of them was being in this recording studio with Joni Mitchell when I was a kid. That's always stuck with me. Even then, going to Minnie Riperton sessions, recording sessions. I don't know if you know who Maya Rudolph's mom. Maya Rudolph's mom. She doesn't know that I know her, but I knew her when she was a baby. And Maya Rudolph's mom is Minnie Riperton, was the girl that, remember that song "Loving You Is Easy Because You're Beautiful" with that high voice? That's her mom, and my mom had clothes for her. Anyway, this photo shoot with Ringo Starr, where for his solo record, where he had the spacesuit on, was something that my mom did. Photo sessions with Norman Seeff, which was a great photographer in the 70s that my dad used to work with. There's a lot. I could go on and on and on. I saw a lot of really cool stuff. Meeting Sylvester, who was sort of like this off the wall gay pop star back in the late 60s, early 70s, sort of like Sly Stone a little bit. He gave me a pet rat, my first pet rat. So anyway, it goes on and on and on. David Bowie, you know, he came into the picture back when I was a kid, and he was definitely larger than life individual.
Yeah.
Going to his concerts, you know, like it was something that stuck with me.
Yeah, well, I kind of feel like he is someone who, like, I went to his exhibition that toured the year before he died, like when he was sick and he didn't tell anyone.
Right.
Which was kind of a cool move, because everyone would have like descended on it if it happened afterwards. And I feel like you see his work and you go, he took every idea he had right to the end. Like he never held back at all. Like, were you feeling creative at this point?
Did I what?
Feeling creative, being surrounded by this? Like, did you want to be?
I mean, I was, you know, it was a pretty artistic environment. My parents are both really artistic, and my grandmother was as well, and so that was just part and parcel of just the environment. You know, I wouldn't have really known much else, you know, except for when I was in school, in public school, which is very conservative bullshit kind of thing, and I hated it. But I didn't really recognize what was going on.
Yeah.
Then I sort of got more of an understanding of it later on as I got older, you know.
Yeah. How do you think the world compared that you started coming up with when you became a musician? Like,
how did it compare?
Was it as exciting, or like what was kind of the?
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I think when you know, Guns first started, I can't really say there was a lot of similarities to it then, but as it turned into sort of a big band, you know, late 80s into the 90s, I could start to compare some of the sort of unworldly realities that sort of were on the same plane that I could relate to.
Yeah. What about punk rock?
Yeah, what about punk rock?
Yeah, what about it? Yeah, what?
I know punk rock's great. I was living in West Hollywood when punk rock really became a thing. And I guess I was probably 13, 14, 15 during that punk sort of reign. Yeah, my only thing about, and there were some great punk bands that came out of LA, but my whole thing about punk in LA was that it was more of a fashion statement than it was coming out of England or what was coming out of New York, as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
But you know, with all due respect to LA bands, I mean, fucking X was great. I loved Fear.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I even loved the Germs, even though I thought the Germs were sort of like, I don't know, but there was some really great bands that came out of the LA punk scene. But as a whole, I always thought it was a little bit of a glam fest.
Yeah. which doesn't have a lot of basis, you know, like there's not a lot of like musical basis. A glam fest is an interesting way of putting it. When did you first connect like music and power, like for yourself and for the world around you, sort of, you know?
I never have. I never thought that, uh, being a musician in any shape or form was some sort of power that you could wield. you know
Really? Yeah.
no, I understand that with a certain kind of status or a certain this or certain that, you have a certain amount of power, but I don't exercise that. I'm not into it.
Did you ever feel like there was a connection between your hands and like an emotional connection between like your heart and your hands and stuff?
Well, I mean, the emotional connection between yourself, you could call it your heart or your head or whatever it is, but between that and what you do on your instrument, yeah, or what you do as an artist, what comes out of your hands in that sense, I can totally relate to. It's actually the only real like honest way for me to be able to express myself. I mean, verbally it's just a lot harder. It's a lot more awkward to try and get those feelings out as sincerely as you would if you're playing guitar or even if you were drawing something.
Yeah. What's it been like connecting with Myles? Like what kind of struck you about him? Because he's like one of those, like those kind of vocalists don't come along very often.
No, I mean, I was shocked when I first met Myles and heard him sing. Let's see, I think the thing about Myles and I is we sort of connected musically sight unseen. I'd sent him some music and never met him before.
Yeah, right.
Or I'd only heard of him and I'd never actually heard him sing or anything. And I just took it, like a shot in the dark and sent him some music when I was doing a solo record back in 2010. And he sent this song back that lyrically and melodically just connected with the music that I'd sent him. And it was just this thing where I was really sort of blown away by it. And so then he flew to LA and we met for the first time and we just hit it off on a personal level, because Myles is very sort of grounded and laid back and unassuming kind of individual, very different than what you picture when you think of a lead singer.
Yeah.
And so we ended up doing another song together and we just clicked that way.
Yeah.
And so we just seem to have this kind of relationship where he knows, like I'll write a piece of music and he finds something in it. It never really fails.
Yeah.
And we never talk about it. It just happens.
Do you kind of aim to have like, you've got, a good rock record has Tales of Sorrow. You've got like Love and the Allure of a Temptress, which you have in the new album, and The Outlaw Life, and what Sabbath referred to as Where the Sons of Freedom Find Their Home. Do you kind of aim to get all of those elements in each piece of music?
I don't think it's a conscious thing, I mean, the freedom to be able to express yourself however you feel like expressing yourself, unhindered, kind of without anybody pointing you in any particular direction. That's a freedom unto itself. Yeah. And then you just do what you want to do. I don't think I ever thought, oh, I'm going to find my gateway through this song.
Yeah. Well, it's like there's a real through line to, like your music always sounds like your music. There's a real through line from like your earliest albums, through to here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, because it means there's some sort of recognition.
Yeah.
You can tell who's playing or whatever, and that's always like really the most special compliment you can get is to have an identity that people can recognize.
Which you do, like undeniably. That's if like I've always thought like Appetite was the perfect rock record, like end to end sort of thing. What are your top 3 perfect rock records that have everything, all the elements?
Okay, wow. Okay, well, my favorite, one of my favorite ones at least was the Aerosmith Rocks record, which was a big influence on me. The Stones Beggar's Banquet record, and there's like 3 Stones records that all fit that bill, but that one in particular. And then probably I'm just going to say this, there's more, but you're saying 3. Led Zeppelin 2.
Yep.
The number Led Zeppelin 1 is great too, but Led Zeppelin 2 was special. It had a big influence on me before I even knew it was having an influence on me. I was drawn to it when I was really little, when it first came out. and it was part of my parents' record collection, and I listened to it a lot when I was a kid because I loved Whole Lotta Love. I loved that attitude that it had.
Yep.
And then when I started playing guitar, that sound was actually had a go-to thing that I identified with all these years later. You know?
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, you in your book talk about listening to Aerosmith rocks with a girl in her bedroom, and you completely lost interest in the girl and were just transfixed by the album. Has that ever happened again? Have you ever been overcome by it?
That was the key record that sort of took me over.
Yeah.
At a time when I was susceptible to that, you know. I mean, I've heard a lot of amazing records that have had a big influence on me and will take me out of a conversation, no problem. I could be talking to somebody and hear something and then go there. But this particular moment, this particular incident was really sort of like a major turning point in my life at that time.
In terms of being a musician and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it really sort of set me off in the direction that I was going to go.
Yeah.
That evening. It happened first at a party. I was at a party. I used to hang out with a lot of kids that were a lot older than me.
Yeah.
And I was at this party, and there was that record was on in the background. It was the first time I ever heard it. And it caught my attention then. So there I was alone, surrounded by all these people, and just focused on this sound coming from the speakers.
Yeah.
You know, like something out of like one of the special effects in a movie where everything, and then there's a stationary object. Anyway, and then, you know, I don't know how long it was, a couple weeks or a month or whatever it was, that I heard the record again at that girl's house, and it took me over. And so it was definitely like, that was the influence that was going to set me in the direction that I was going to go.
Yeah, well, that's a powerful thing. It's important.
Yeah, it was pretty powerful.
Now, Motorhead, what's your favorite Motorhead song?
Oh fuck, there's so many great Motorheads. I'll just go like We Are the Road Crew. Was one of my favorite songs for the longest time, and I actually named my band Road Crew after that song at the time. Killed by Death is probably one of my favorite Motorhead anthems, but if we sat here for a second, we could go through Motorhead songs for hours, right?
Did you ever hang out with him at the Rainbow and stuff?
Lemmy?
Yeah.
Oh, I was friends with Lemmy all the way from the first time I met him in 1987. No, 1986, 87, somewhere in there. From 87, we met at St. Moritz, right, which is a bar in London, and he invited us over to we were invited over to a Motorhead session for the album that they were doing at that time.
Yep.
Whatever it was called. But anyway, and I was a little intimidated. I was like, fuck, you know, it's Motorhead. We're all going over there. And we went in, and they were super fucking gracious. And this is when Filthy was around.
Yeah.
And it was great. And then Lemmy and I went to St. Moritz that night, and we had drinks, and we've been friends ever since, all the way up until he passed.
That's beautiful.
So yeah, we spent a lot of time at the Rainbow. You know what's really funny though is prior to that, I went to the Rainbow one night with my then girlfriend, and we had a booth, and we're sitting there, and I got up to go take a piss, and I came back, and Lemmy was sitting at the table with my girlfriend, chatting her up. And I came back, and I was so fucking starstruck that Lemmy was at my table that I sat down on the other side of her and just sat there. And I was just sort of stunned. And then finally Lemmy realized that 3 was a crowd or something or whatever. And he got up and he split. And my girlfriend was like, why didn't you say something? I said, you know who that was? Anyway, I told Lemmy that story.
You thought like it was just some dude.
She did, yeah.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
If you had a musical Mount Rushmore, who would be the faces carved into the stone?
Oh, that's a different question.
Yeah.
I've never been asked anything like that before. All right, well, okay, we have to put Hendrix on there. We'd have to put Wes Montgomery on there.
Yeah.
We would have to put Billie Holiday on there. We'd have to put John Bonham. How many are there? 5?
Generally 5. Yeah.
So I said John Bonham, and oh fuck, and so that's 4, right? Oh shit, who would be that 5th one? I would have to say BB King.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rock and roll.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what up.
I mean, I mean, they're rock musicians, either rock musicians proper or they're musicians that influence rock majorly, you know?
What, yeah, if you, as someone who started playing in a purely instrumental band, what did it mean when you kind of found a vocalist, and yeah, how did that change?
I think, you know, like I worked with different singers for, you know, on and off for a while. And then when I met Axl and we started jamming together, he was the only singer that ever brought an emotional content to it that affected me on an emotional level, on an energy level, like really sort of like a song all of a sudden went to a whole new level, and I felt it. And that's when I realized, you know, where music and vocals really meet, you know, because prior to that, everybody that I'd worked with sucked, and I had no use for it. And I would just rather play instrumentally than that. But that's when I first really arrived at that poignant feeling that you get when things connect on a lyrical and vocal level and the music level.
What was the first song you made together?
Oh shit, I don't really, I can't remember the name of it. There was a couple songs when we were in Hollywood Rose. There's one in particular that I'm thinking of, but I cannot remember for the life of me what the name of it is.
It was a while ago, you know.
It was a while ago.
In the golden early.
But I mean, you know, I think Welcome to the Jungle was a really great indicator of how we connected, you know.
Yeah. It must be great revisiting everything and seeing that impact on people. And, you know, you've made songs that kind of have traveled with people for 30 years.
That's such a foreign prospect for me.
Really?
Because you're so into it, you know, in sort of this insular band way, right? And then it becomes other people's, and it's almost not tangible. It's like almost fantastical that people at any given time might be listening to your record and taking it in. And I find in my travels, you know, people will come up to you and tell you stuff about how, and the only way that I really relate to it is because I think of records that did that for me. And so you have to be telling the truth, because I went through that with this record or that record. Otherwise, you know, it's hard to believe that your stuff, that something that you sat around coming up with and went in the studio and recorded actually is out there and affecting people.
Yeah. You know? You're kind of living in your little bubble sort of thing.
Yeah, it's weird. And then you go out and you do concerts and it all comes together and you're like, it's really sort of a blessing, you know?
Yeah. What was your first show?
The first show I ever went to? Oh, fuck. The first arena show at the Forum that I ever went to was definitely David Bowie. But prior to that, I went to a lot of like Linda Ronstadt at the Troubadour, Carly Simon, people that my mom worked, Helen Reddy, you know, all these different artists back then, Joni Mitchell. Like, I remember going to a lot of those club gigs, but the first real big concert I ever went to was David Bowie at the Station.
Yeah. Do you know Rob Halford had the same first show from Judas Priest?
In LA?
Yeah, oh no, I don't think it was in LA, but the same Bowie for the first time.
Yeah, that's funny, right? I didn't know that.
Did you ever want to go down a visual path?
Go down a visual
like
path?
A visual path, like characters and like all that kind of stuff.
What do you mean exactly?
Like Bowie, like he had like.
Oh, did I ever? No, I never looked at music that way. And I think I like Bowie the most when he was sort of during that period where he was just doing the suits my mom was doing for him, and that sort of look. Some of the other more creative stuff I never really related to because it was always very animated to me. That's one of the reasons why, same with Kiss and same with a lot of those very theatrical kind of bands. Although I loved Rocky Horror when that was happening.
Yeah, that was a whole thing.
But yeah, for bands to sort of put on that whole sort of persona on top of the music, for some reason I never really clicked with me. So for me personally, it's always been pretty stripped down, you know. Never wanted to get real colorful.
Yeah. What are the 5 songs that changed your life? Last question.
5 songs that changed my life. Oh, you're really throwing them out there and trying to do
Yeah, well, it's all about, you as a fan and all that kind of
trying
stuff.
to do it quickly. Okay, well, I mean, hold on. Okay, so brace. Whole Lotta Love was one of them. Superfly.
Yeah.
Curtis Mayfield. Tommy from The Who, the song. That whole record, really. Tommy. Oh shit, that reminds me. Powerage was one of those ACD records. That's ACDC records. That's perfect from top to bottom. Okay. Anyway, so what, I named 3 people who. What was the question?
Songs that changed your life.
Oh, songs that changed my life. Right. So Back in the Saddle.
Yeah.
Definitely, because that was that key opening song on that record. Hold on. Freeway Jam from Jeff Beck. And that's off the top of my head, that whole record. Really.
Like exercise. What bands do you and Myles bond over most deeply?
I don't know. We don't really discuss. I think we just like the same stuff. I don't think we ever really sat down and analyzed it. So I think, oh, we really like, come together over this record or that record. Yeah, I mean, we pretty much like most of the same shit, and it's hard for me to really specifically nail down one thing.
It's nice to bond and be like.
Yeah. It's funny, we as musicians, one of the things that you talk, at least for me, I talk about the least is actual music.
Really?
With other musicians, yeah. There's some people, but that you talk tech stuff with, like I love talking guitars with Joe Perry, right?
Yep.
But when it comes to music, a lot of people, that's the last thing they want to fucking talk about, because that's all we do.
Yeah.
So to discuss it, it's really not, unless you're working on something or creating something or, collaborating on something. Yeah. But then again, you could be talking about a record that just came out, or maybe, you're talking about some record that you just mutually love. So
yeah, what are you listening to right now?
What am I into?
Yeah, right now.
Right now, I've been listening
to the state of rock and roll is. Yeah.
Well, I was listening to the new ACD record, right? But what I've been listening to more than anything has been fucking pedal steel guitar players. So like Lloyd Green has been one guy that I've been listening to, who most country guys would know who I was talking about. And then another band that I was listening to like nonstop for the last couple of weeks up until a few weeks ago was The Meters, which was a 60s and 70s and into the 80s, really like the first funk band. You have to look them up. They were fucking amazing.